What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown video from this past weekend, which saw the second weekend numbers for Black Adam, the first weekend numbers for Pray for the Devil, and many other films, which we'll talk about today. Before we go any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light that fire button, Odyssey, and smash the little rumble button as well as we jump right into the numbers, because Black Adam is in a position where it could potentially be a massive flop, or what will likely now be the scenario now that we have confirmation of a November 11th release in China. This film likely to be saved by the Chinese Communist Party. So hey, kudos to you, Warner Brothers, for continuing to do those deals with the Chinese Communist Party. Oh man, you love to see it from modern Hollywood continuing to fund the same party that is currently in the midst of a modern genocide, which we all know is happening, and yet we choose to do nothing about. It's just kind of crazy. Warner Brothers, you silly old film, you silly old film studio, you with your silly old movie, which really isn't even all that good. So anyway, Black Adam dropped 59% domestically, which actually is not the worst of the drops that we've ever seen from a superhero film. In fact, it's probably on the better side of drops for big budget superhero movies, domestically at the very least. Currently at $110.9 million domestically. Excuse me, my voice is still a little tired from the weekend. For anyone that showed up to the meetup in Orlando, thank you very much for showing up and for all the very kind words and for all just the awesome conversations that we were able to have. But my voice is definitely still tired from that. But Black Adam, as I was mentioning before, right, $110 million domestically, it's looking like it's not going to be all that impressive in the domestic marketplace based off of those numbers. And based on my projections on the current numbers that are available, it's looking like this film has basically a good chance of being able to flop. That is, of course, until we take into account the fact that it has secured itself a China release. If we go ahead and look to the last major DCEU film to get a China release, which was Aquaman, that film made $291.8 million from China alone. Now, one big caveat that we always have to remind ourselves of is that 75% of that amount goes to China, goes to the Communist Party. And again, think about how much money, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone to the Communist Party of China by mainstream Hollywood, by producing these films and by making these deals with the devil, essentially, and have allowed for them to continue to push all of the madness, right? We're going after and criticizing Russia. It's like, they can't even hold a candle to the things going on currently in China, but we can't talk about that all that much, especially in Hollywood, because it's for some reason, the golden goose that really isn't all that golden when you remember just how little they get as far as actual percentage from the numbers themselves. The fact still remains, though, 291, almost $300 million, and probably closer to that when you adjust that for inflation, is again a number that we have to take very seriously. Now, whereas I think Aquaman is a better film than Black Adam, they're both, in my eyes, very similar movies. Black Adam was a C- film for me. Aquaman was a C+ movie for me. So they're very much in the same as far as the actual quality of the movie, of them not being all that great, but still having some entertainment value to them. I think a lot of hardcore DC fans, DCEU fans especially, will probably find a lot to like there. So the question, though, of course, is going to be, does the international audience think in the same degree? And as we're seeing right now, without China, it's actually not looking like it's going to be all that impressive. If we actually look to the box office projections, based off of most historical standards, the $250 million number there means the film likely, without China, will be somewhere between $357 and $500 million by the end of this run. If you remember, this film's break-even point is $500 million, which means the film either will make around $166,000 or a little bit over or a little bit less than that, or will lose $85 million. But we have to, of course, keep in mind that now that China is in the discussion, beforehand it wasn't, they were trying to secure a release date. November 11th is now that release date for it. We will now be covering and following those numbers, because this film will likely be able to surpass these projections. And the question, though, of course, is how much will it actually get from China? If we were to look at the metrics from the last Aquaman movie, that, again, I think is a decent metric for us to look at. We can also look at other Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson films as well. So looking at, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle from 2017, that film was able to make at least $76 million. The Fate of the Furious, right? We can look at the Fast and Furious franchise, massive franchise, $192 million. I don't think we're going to see that type of, money there, because Fast and Furious franchise, not nearly the same audience as that of the DCEU. But we, I think, expect somewhere between the $76 million or so it made from Jumanji and the $291 million it made from Aquaman. Obviously, that is on the higher end of things. Remember that Aquaman was the first of the DCEU to ever cross $1 billion, because a lot of these films that have come out from DC have either had very lackluster box office or in certain cases have even been downright flops. And so it's really, it's just, again, incredible that we continue to see this reliance from big Hollywood, especially from studios like Warner Brothers, their heavy reliance upon China and the China money. In trying to secure their films to be solvent. It's just kind of, again, it's a sad state of things, and I'm going to call out any studio that does those dealings with China. Warner Brothers and Disney happen to be some of the biggest ones, but they are definitely not the only ones to ever have done that before. And if your financial success is reliant upon and contingent upon the Chinese Communist Party, then I would have to say that, hey, your film must not be all that great. Because guess what? There are some incredible films like Joker, for instance, that were able to make $1 billion, a rated R film at that, all without China. There have been several films since then. Top Gun Maverick, another great example. This year was able to make $1.4 billion, all without China. And I think that it's very important for us to remind ourselves and to remind Hollywood, guess what? You don't need that crap. And if you're going to continue to support this crap, we might have to try to put our money elsewhere, or at the very least make our voices very loudly heard to the very best of our ability. Maybe with Elon Musk buying a Twitter, maybe that will allow us to have those types of conversations in a much more open fashion as more information comes out about the type of collusion that's been going on between our government and Twitter. But we'll have to, of course, wait and see what happens with that. But Black Adam currently worldwide $250 million, so towards the lower end of historical projections, which is the reason why this film initially was being projected to flop. If you look to my box office breakdown on my own channel from Sunday, or rather from yesterday, you will see that I was projecting this film to lose money. But China being now in the discussion, which again, as recording that video, had not gotten that update, had not gotten that official confirmation yet. It was initially, again, projected to be a flop, but now with China in the picture, chances of it making its money back are definitely a lot higher. If you look to the other film that came out this weekend, or rather, second weekend of release, Ticket to Paradise, actually had a pretty decent drop-off, and now at $121.5 million. I don't quite understand it, but apparently there's an audience that cares about seeing George Clooney and Julia Roberts just enough to be able to make that money, the money back for the movie. We also have Pray for the Devil, which just, again, issues for so many reasons, so I'm just going to go past that. If you care about it, it made $7.1 million in the domestic box office. Smile at $186.8 million. Cool to see this film's marketing be able to really push it towards a huge financial success. Hollywood Ends, which was a terrible garbage movie because of a low budget, already made its money back, but already is actually doing better than I think expected. That 80% drop week 1 to week 2 was so steep. A lot of people thought that it probably wasn't going to be able to recover in any type of way at the box office. It's actually kind of evened out quite a bit. I imagine Halloween was probably a big reason for that. By the way, blessed All Saints Day, everybody. And I think that probably is the reason why the film was able to hold off any further drops. But I expect the film to get a little over 100 million and then pretty much crap out at that point in time. And just to show everybody once again the release schedule for the movie. So the film is, again, as it said, it's now officially scheduled to come out in China November 11th and then later in Japan. Some people may have said, well, hey, even without China, Japan could have pushed it over the edge. But I think that sometimes people give Japan a little bit too much credit. Yeah, you can get some money from Japan, but it's usually not enough to make that much of a difference. China is very much a different scenario because, again, we see massive numbers like for Aquaman, where we're talking about almost $300 million. I don't think Black Adam is necessarily going to be able to do that amount of money because we're seeing a very different world, right? We live in a very different world than what we used to prior to the pandemic. You look to countries like China, and even though we can all continuously call it the Communist Party, especially the way they treat their people, especially how they lock their people down and do tons of other things because of the pandemic and things that they're continuing to do, even all of that stuff could eventually impact those numbers that are coming forward. And so the big question is, how much do you think Black Adam's going to make, especially now that China is in the picture? My original projections were somewhere between 350 and 500, and a lot of that is based upon other films that have been in, again, all of this is based off of historical standards. If you look to other films that had around this amount of money at the same time of its release, you start to recognize where my numbers come from. So for instance, Fantastic Beasts was at around $280 million worldwide. By the end of its second weekend, it ended up around $400 million. If you look to even a film like, let's see, $250 million, Uncharted, $226 million by the end of its second weekend, ended around $401 million. This one had a little bit better legs than the previous film that I had mentioned. And so you start to recognize that there are these standards, right? Eternals, $281 million, ended just around $400 million as well. Right now, this film seems to be much more along the track of a film like Shang-Chi, especially when you look to the actual total number there. Very, very similar. And if we see similar legs to Shang-Chi, which actually had very good domestic legs, that film ended around $431.6 million, which was very impressive because no one expected that film to do as well as it did at the time of its release. And it did very well, especially domestically. Since Black Adam is seeing somewhat similar numbers, at least week 1 and week 2, domestically, internationally, it's doing okay. And now that China's thrown into it, again, we could easily see this film get well north of $500 million now at this point in time. What are y'all's thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below, especially your thoughts about the dealings that they have with China. And again, thank you very much for your time and attention today. I'm in a tie because I'm literally about to head off to work. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, loud that fire button, smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed All Saints Day, a blessed November. And as always, God bless.